So everyone, Jim Rowan, I head up AI at Deloitte, and one of the big conversations we get into at Deloitte a lot is just what are organizations doing from an AI perspective? Where are they applying AI within their business, and how are they driving value from that? So we think we have a great panel lined up here for you guys today to talk about those specific questions, get really specific in less than 25 minutes. So we'll try to do this quickly. So maybe I'm going to start with just quick introductions of the panel. So Karen, would you mind starting first and talking just a little bit about what you're doing with AI and a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm Karen Stroop. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at WEX, and we are a B2B fintech that focuses on payments in the mobility, benefits, and overall corporate payment space. And we're using AI across the board. We've used it for many years in risk and fraud, as you can imagine, but have built on that using all forms of AI to simplify the business of doing business. So we're using it in service, we're using it in reimagining design and product management and coding and building new products for customers. So really across the spectrum, some are experimentation, some are at scale.
Great.
Dan Slagan, the Chief Marketing Officer at Tomorrow.io. We are a weather intelligence company helping businesses and governments be more resilient and to manage all their weather-related challenges and opportunities. So of course we're using AI across the business to be more efficient and more creative, but at the strategic level in the weather space, the thing that really differentiates your AI and your models is where the data comes from. So we spent the last couple of years building our own proprietary satellites and launching them up into space. We now have 8 satellites live. We have 2 going every quarter, but it's that proprietary data that really powers our AI so that the output and the forecast and the recommendations going to businesses are completely unique.
Great. Rob.
Hi, I'm Rob Farmer from Nissan, where I lead market intelligence. I study all things related to the customer for Nissan and maintaining Nissan's customer focus. So nowadays that includes things like autonomous cars and electric vehicles, tariffs, but all things customer focus.
And I'm Vladimir Jacimovic. I'm the CEO of Accelerators. Nissan is a customer, so this is quite audacious to actually bring your customer to explain to the audience what we do. I must also say I did not fly an F-35, but I'm a field basketball player.
That's awesome. All right, well, let's start with talking about AI transformation, and maybe, Karen, I'll bring it back to you a little bit. How are you thinking about AI transformation within your organization? And specifically, like, what are the barriers you're trying to navigate through, how you're measuring value? We'd love to hear that.
Yeah, well, I will try to be brief. So we have 3 bold goals across the organization that are 2029 goals, and they're intentionally really, really big goals. One's about creating new revenue sources, one's about transforming our work, and one's about our people. And let me just hit on a couple things. One that has really surprised me is we have focused on having a program called the AI Accelerators, and the goal is to demystify AI, get people off of the sidelines and into the tools and capabilities. So we've put the tools in the hands of people, but then there's a little bit of fear. Like, how do I use it? I've got to create a new habit. I'm sitting on the sidelines. And so really coaching people through that experience. And what has been really incredible is we have 400 of these accelerators now, and they are transforming their own function. And so by creating that energy within the company and holding people's hands and supporting them, you're seeing this natural momentum in a way that if I give you a goal and say, you need to go do this, it's not as motivating as you reimagining your own workflow. And just one quick example of that, we have a new product we're launching, and my product marketing leader went and one evening built a profile of a customer, and she started testing different campaigns against it and uncovered a new product offering that we were going to kill, a feature we're going to kill from the roadmap. She's like, actually, I think there's greatness here. Yeah. Now let's go test with some customers. And so there's this natural energy that's happening by starting from within.
That makes a ton of sense. And Dan, maybe you could share a little bit about how you guys are thinking about this as well, and maybe how you're also using AI in some of your day-to-day activities.
Certainly. For any marketers in the crowd today? Maybe 1 or 2. What gets me excited is that the marketing team at Tomorrow, we've actually been on AI for as soon as ChatGPT basically blew up. And we adopted it across the board. We work across every single industry imaginable, so our product marketing needs are quite complex. Every industry, every use case, multiple languages, country, content we need needs to be written, audio, video, and it's constantly changing. So we don't have the capabilities to have a full-time video studio, and we've been able to use AI to really get things to market much faster, much more efficient. And we did that across all the different areas of marketing where we needed to save time. Once the company realized what marketing was doing and the success we were having, they then asked the marketing department, hey, can you guys go to all the other departments and try and take them from 0 to 1? Go work with the finance team and the product team and the people in HR team and just help them start to think about the systems they could put into place. And so we did that, and now as we come into this year, the entire company is now tasked with the V2 of AI implementation. So every single department has 3 core goals that they need to report on at all of our all hands and make sure that they're achieving those goals. So it's just to say, marketing, any department can be the catalyst, can be the leader. And once you get some of those successes that you mentioned, there's really some momentum that gets exciting.
That's great. So now I'm not sure how you guys are going to handle this question together or not, Rob and Vlad. So you can see if you want a tag team here. But what was some of your experiences and advice for the group?
Actually, it's very similar to both of the stories that Dan and Karen have shared. How Nissan's been using a lot of these AI tools is, again, to understand customers better. And what we've been working on with Vladimir at Algo Verde is having a platform to develop synthetic profiles.
Yep.
So then going to those profiles and then just asking them many, many questions. So we've had to retrain a lot of workers. We've had to get a lot of people comfortable with data coming in from other sources. So it's been as much of a culture change and a bureaucracy change as it has been a new technology adoption process.
Yeah. I love the way you guys are doing, too, talking about sort of these synthetic customers. You have really sort of quick prototyping and piloting with AI. It gives you a lot of value out of the gate, which I think is a super helpful story. What were some of the organizational barriers, though, that you had to try to overcome with this? Because sometimes, last night, Vladimir, you and I were talking to the group about sort of the clocks. Maybe you want to share the clock example, because I think it's very helpful.
So it is a story of 3 clocks. You have AI that works in a matter of seconds and minutes. And our platform can deliver results, can tell you what the synthetic version of your customer thinks in a matter of 6, 7 seconds. Then the human is in front of it, the user, somebody on the Nissan team, and they work in hours and days. They actually have to think about it, what it was. What's the implication of this owner has a dog, and the dog is in this SUV? What do I do with that information? And it slows down the clock to hours and days. And then the real problem comes in, that the organization itself works in a matter of quarters and years. It takes 4 years to build a car. So it is a game of synchronizing 3 clocks.
Yep.
And you have to be rather skillful of holding the user's hand along the way in order for them to actually embrace it and so forth. To deliver value is actually not the biggest problem. For them to consume the value is one of the biggest problems.
So I think one of the questions I tend to get a lot from clients is, like, what are the real value use case examples? Like, how are you measuring ROI? So maybe starting with you guys in terms of how you sold the program, like, how did you actually get that ROI metric, like, figured out? Did you have that solved before you sold the program and thought about doing it in the business?
Well, at the moment, almost every AI project that gets rolled out, certainly what we do, and we work across multiple verticals, CPG, auto, financials, et cetera, it will be cost savings. You did something, it would cost you a lot of money, now we can do it for a fraction of that. The next one is time, it takes a lot less time. And those 2 are undeniable, that will happen over and over and over. But there are 2 additional hidden benefits, which are a lot more valuable. But you cannot insert them into an ROI equation when you first meet with the board or meet with the CEO, because he's on how do you think about it? The first one is, it is a Nissan term, agility.
Yeah.
Ability to change direction upon receiving some signals from the market. In the traditional design process, you would have to go press Control-Alt-Delete and start the process from the beginning. Here, you can just, like in slalom and skiing, make a turn. The second one is that you get to know your customers more deeply. And that was a bit of an unusual one. So if you combine cost savings plus time to market, plus agility, plus understanding your customers a lot better, you start getting a competitive advantage. And that's how we try to package it. But we always lead with cost savings.
That makes a lot of sense. So, and maybe Dan and Karen, I'll throw it back over to you for a second too. As you guys have positioned some of your business cases and trying to drive change here, what are some tips or things that people should keep in mind as they try to do these, and to also think through, like, being very specific about the value, like, we're going to see this return in a certain period of time, and how to manage that?
Sure, I can start. Take off my marketing hat for a sec. If I go back a few years ago, we were a traditional SaaS company selling weather into the enterprise space. And as we started to look at what our strategic moat would be and where the data would come from, we figured it was space. So you ask about, asking for, big ask. We went to the board and said, we're going to need a couple $100 million and we're going to need to build satellites and launch them into space. And we're a software company, by the way. And so the board's immediate reaction is, well, what's this going to look like? But through those conversations, we could prove that, look, this data moat and what we're going to be able to have coming down from space that then powers our AI is going to be the thing that not only differentiates us, but also unlocks markets globally, whether that's for enterprise or for the public sector, or for international governments. And you could see this is now a 10x opportunity for the company. So my advice would just be don't think, don't think too small, don't think too big. Like anything is possible.
Yeah, so to try to bring in a practical example as well. So I think about it in 3 ways at WEX, and we're very business case focused. But one is what's the impact to the P&L? But 2 is what's the impact to the customer? And it could be the reputation we're creating as being tech forward. It could be improving Net Promoter Score. It could be delighting customers so they buy more of our products. But I would just really encourage people not to forget about the impact on the customer. And then the third is productivity. Are we using our own time on value-added things, or could we use them on better things? And so from a product management perspective, we're working on using AI to create user stories and write the epics that are better, high-quality epics, so we can spend more time with customers, whether it be starting with synthetic users and other things, or we can do more experiments. So we're not reducing people, but we are getting more output, better output for the company. And so one quick example is most of you have benefits and you get claims and you get something called substantiation and saying, hey, can you send me the receipt? And everyone hates the process. It's bad for customers, it's bad for WEX because you get these mundane calls. And so if you think about a 2x2, it's in the upper left corner. And so the way we can use AI is everything across the spectrum from, are you submitting the right document? Can we give you confidence that it is the right document? Can we give WEX confidence it's the right document? Can we have different hurdles? But we can completely transform that process that it does have 3 benefits. It reduces cost, it improves Net Promoter Score, and it improves our reputation as someone who's leading with AI in the industry that makes other companies want to work with us.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the interesting things, the thread here, right, is this very consistent approach to value, very clear definition of what you're trying to achieve, very close connection to customers, having really sound business case are all really helpful things for us to keep in mind. As you think about one of the other hot topics that's hitting us in AI agents. So we get this question a lot. It's hard to not even, TV shows, now everyone's talking about AI agents. The commercials are everywhere. How are you guys navigating that within your organization? Because there seems like there's this massive amount of hype around this, but there's also reality to the benefit can come. I thought this is a toss-up question. Anyone wants to take this one first?
I'll be happy to take it. Again, if you think about a consumer-focused world where you're trying to understand a consumer, and again, you can do that through direct questioning of the consumer, or now we've got these synthetic profiles. But if you start to think about an agentic survey, where that agentic survey can then go out and talk to those customers with questions that it composes, that it thinks of, that it gets answers from the customers from, it's a very powerful way forward. And again, we're just beginning to experiment with these kind of trials, but they're definitely in place.
Yeah, makes.
I can.
Go ahead.
Please.
Well, so I think right now we're at an interesting inflection point where the technology is far outpacing the cultural change and the adoption of the workforce. So the technology is evolving every 6 months. It, in general, takes 6 years for cultures to evolve. And so the technology is outpacing all of us and our human behavior. And so our approach is to experiment.
Yep.
All of the stuff is coming in so fast that you experiment. What do you want to learn? How quickly do you learn it? And so we're setting up teams on 2-week sprints, partnering with a third party to say, let's learn, and you make a pivot, persevere, stop decision. And so that's our approach.
So we use agents to basically create virtual replicas of your customers. And to create them was not easy, but it was doable. But what is the real challenge is to make the customer trust them. So the beautiful thing about the agents, they have memory, they can loop, you can ask them many questions. You have multiple agents have a debate among themselves. When Robert says a survey, you can have a focus group. All of these things are now possible and substantially easier than before, and you can do it as many times as you want. But where we spend, for every hour I spend on the agent discussions with the tech team, I spend 4 hours talking about how to make our UI, UX more trustworthy, how to engage with the agents, so that user will build the confidence and will actually say, yes, they told us they like the dog in the car. What does that mean? And how can I believe that is the case? So there is a lot about trust.
We hear a lot about trust as sort of a challenge. There's a bunch of different panel discussions going on, lightning talks around trust as well. I mean, what are some tips that you would share with people about how you've helped to drive enterprise trust around AI? I mean, there's a lot of this stuck on, maybe we sold the business case to the board's happy with it, great idea, financial return, and then it sort of gets into the rest of the enterprise, and we have to actually feel comfortable with our AI agent next to us, working with us. What are some tips you would share with people?
It's still early days. The humans
you got all the answers yet? No.
No. Humans are humans. Every customer we have has taken us to the blind A/B testing. It sucks. They go and they have already solved the problem with one data set, and then you have to go solve it with yours, and you say, oh, it does about the same thing, maybe a lot faster.
Yeah.
But where it gets to be interesting is if you can really what we had to do at the end of the day is with one very large consulting firm, we got 2 data sets from them, from their clients. We have produced the results, and we will publish something, probably HBR, soon enough to kind of put this myth. But believe it or not, all of this is in the embeddings.
Yeah.
The embeddings are rich enough to actually be able to tell you about the consumer taste, their willingness to pay, et cetera, et cetera. It is in the embeddings. You have to find it.
We also found at Nissan that the top executives are quite eager for the change in the AI space.
Right.
The new college graduates from MIT and other schools are also quite eager to bring the change.
Yep.
But it's that middle layer that really requires the most work. And what I found, very similar to what Karen is saying, is just going through a learning, unlearning kind of process, breaking it down to component steps, and very gingerly holding their hand and walking them through it and showing you get the result this way here. Maybe it used to be numerics. Now you're getting large language words. But at the end of the day, the results are the same. Then once they get to there, then you take them to the next step, and then the next, and on and on. So a very step-by-step approach.
I think there are 3 different stakeholders you're solving for when you talk about trust or confidence. One is internally with the employee, like within our own team. Do we have AI governance and all that? 2, we're a B2B2C company. So the second is the people we're selling to. And one thing I found is, as much as we pride ourselves on being like, oh, this is AI-powered technology, that actually raises the red flag on the recipients and like, oh, well, what sort of model governance do we need to do? What do you do with the data? What are you doing with our data? And so it's a 2-way street there. And now we're actually talking about product marketing, saying, how do we sell this? How do we share the confidence and all the capabilities and thought we're putting into this so that we scale it? And then on the C side, the third is the actual users of it. And we've all had experiences with the chatbots of old, and they're not good. And so we have to rebuild confidence and excitement around trying something new. And that's a huge experimentation and a huge hurdle to get over, to say, like, this is actually a much better experience than picking up the phone and calling. So I think there are 3 different stakeholders. The final thing I'll say is we really approach this from a human-in-the-loop perspective. Like, we're not going to go all in and automate everything. As we're thinking about agents, we're thinking about a human-in-the-loop first, trust, verify, and then we can consider taking the next step.
Yeah. And that's the thing that we are hearing quite a bit right now. The businesses using our software to make decisions, these are major airlines, insurance companies, and so if they make the wrong decision, there's real risk here. And so they want to understand what's behind the AI, but that notion of human in the loop is something we've really had to expand upon, whether we're growing a contract or starting a new one from scratch. But outside of the customer, internally how we've been able to drive change is, one, through, it's not always the best way to do it, but this notion of it's not fear, but it's, look, this is what the risk is to your job. I remember when Midjourney came out years ago, the first thing I did was went to my designer and said, you'd be the first person I'd have to let go if we did layoffs next week. What are you going to do with your career now that I have access to this? And now I go, 2 years later, and it's like, the things she's able to do are incredible. Just as a quick example, we were in an RFP with Disney recently, and they interviewed all these weather companies. How can you help us? What she did was she took AI and she took all the Disney movies that exist, and she implemented, what if those characters had our weather? What if Aladdin knew when to fly on his magic carpet? What if Moana knew when there wasn't going to be a storm? And literally, we moved to the next round with Disney solely based on our creative. Not even, they were like, we'll learn about your tech later, but that was amazing. She completely transformed herself from someone that I would unfortunately be the first person to lay off to I couldn't have done this without you.
Yeah,
That's great.
Wow, I love that creative example. That's great. And one of the things that we also hear on AI agents too is sort of process reimagination. Like I'm going to have to take these processes and look at them differently. Some things we think about is sort of like the everyday automation you see with AI agents, but then also this need to reimagine, which is an interesting and fun word for a bunch of consultants to say, but then the implementation of that is also far more complex than a PowerPoint slide. So I would love to hear how you guys have sort of thought through that, because it seems like some of the real benefits come from being able to actually deploy these across new processes.
Absolutely. So most of what we have experienced so far is the version 1.0, which is individual productivity.
Yeah.
You've given examples of your Mid-Journey graphic designer. There's many such examples, and the power users do extremely well.
Yep.
Yeah. The version 2.0 of this is reimagining the workflows with agents. And that's a lot harder because the company, imagine making a car. They have a process how to make a car. They make millions of cars every year. They cannot now deviate on the fly and make a whole bunch of changes. But if you reimagine the steps in that process and inject Gen AI not just in one node in the journey, but across the journey, then miracles can really start happening. You can actually reflect on that vehicle before you have spent $1 billion building tooling and getting the market feedback. And that can be truly powerful.
Yeah, a fully reimagined process. Do you others have examples? Karen, Dan, Rob, I think Vlad gave you a little bit of your example already. So you kind of get off the hot seat on that question. But I don't know, Dan and Karen, if you've got other examples where you have to really rethink through the process.
Sure. On the product marketing side, again, we have needs across every industry and language, and we just don't have the amount of manpower or budget to do it. So, we started working with a company called HeyGen to create a digital avatar of me. And so basically, I record myself for a couple minutes, and now the team every single week is creating new ads, new videos with me. I'm speaking in different languages. I'm speaking to the energy industry, the aviation industry, and we're getting stuff out in ways we just never would be able to do. And this time of being able to be more efficient, and it's so inspiring for our team is we can now compete. I don't care how big our competitors are, we can now compete at the same stage because our ability to be creative and get things done. And when they start to see that, last year we were named the top 50 marketing teams by Forbes because of our ability to use AI. Like that's really inspiring for them. It doesn't matter how big we are, how small our budget, everything now is level across the playing field.
I love it. I also have a HeyGen avatar as well that goes to conferences for me. A little less dynamic in the networking, but still answers Q&A pretty well, I found. Karen, how about you?
Well, I'll share a challenge, actually.
Yeah.
I think that the near-term, smaller ROI use cases are actually the easy ones. What we are talking about is how are we going to be disrupted by AI? So if you solve for the same customer you've always solved for, it's the user of your product. But if you're the CFO, maybe you want to get rid of that designer. Maybe you want to get rid of that customer that we've always solved.
Yeah.
And so what we're thinking about, it's hard to disrupt yourself, much harder than incrementally improving.
Yes.
And so the challenge that we're talking about internally now is how do we disrupt ourselves? Who's coming for us? And instead of letting it be done to us, how do we incubate small teams that may actually disrupt our core offering?
Yeah.
And it's a fundamentally different way that we're using AI. We're on the early stages, but I worry if we don't do that, then we won't be around in a few years. And I am very confident we will be around, but I think there's a constructive paranoia that you need to approach the future about and imagine what if.
I love that. Yeah, this fear of disruption, we really have to ingrain in a lot of things that we're looking at every day. So I want to ask you guys rapid round before we wrap up here. Maybe just a quick 15, 20 seconds on sort of what's next in the next 12 months. We'll keep it within vision, maybe, what you're seeing for enterprise AI, things we should keep at top of mind. Who can I call on first, or who wants to jump in first?
I can go real quick. I would just say on the side of being able to differentiate yourself is going to become really important. Every time you're using an AI tool or a prompt or whatever, just constantly be thinking, to your point about disrupting yourself, like what's different about what I'm doing that my competitor could be doing the exact same thing? What sets me apart?
Love it.
I think there will be a number of companies that will succeed at an intervention, not transformation, that will create so much value, and their stock prices will shoot up and so forth because they will capture the imagination behind AI, the agents, and this reimagined workflows. It's very hard to say my stock price is going up because my employees are using Copilot. But if you have a specific use case that you can showcase, I think that is what we'll see next 12 months.
Great.
From my side in Nissan, I think doing sales forecasting is really exciting right now. There has never been more disruption in terms of what's going to happen, and there's never been better tools. So I feel like these moments are arriving at the same time, which is great.
Love it. Karen, final words.
I'll say from experimentation to impact.
Yeah, love it. Great future for the enterprise. Well, thank you guys so much for all your insights. I think hopefully really helpful for the audience on the future of AI and the enterprise. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.